"You're too embarrassing for our wedding, Mom. We don't want you there." My daughter Jessica's words echoed in the parking lot of the venue I had just paid $200,000 to secure for her dream wedding. Her fiancé Brandon smirked beside her while his mother, Carol, stood there with her arms crossed, nodding in approval. I stood frozen, holding the receipt in my trembling hands. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. My name is Linda. I'm 58 years old, and this is the story of how my own daughter tried to erase me from the most important day of her life, until I showed her exactly what embarrassing really means. If you're watching this, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story reaches. Let me take you back to the beginning, back to when I thought I had done everything right. I was widowed 8 years ago when Jessica was just 17 years old. My husband Mark died from cancer after a brutal 2-year battle that drained our savings and left me with nothing but a small life insurance policy and a daughter who needed to get through her last year of high school. I worked as a dental hygienist, a practical job with decent pay, but nothing extravagant. After Mark died, I became both mother and father to Jessica. I was her entire world, and she was mine. I sacrificed everything for that girl. I lived in the same small 2-bedroom apartment for 8 years because I couldn't afford anything bigger. I wore the same 3 outfits on rotation to work, mixing and matching pieces from the clearance rack at TJ Maxx so Jessica could have new clothes for school. I drove a 2008 Honda Civic that had over 200,000 miles on it. The check engine light permanently illuminated, the air conditioning broken for 3 summers straight. But Jessica had a reliable car in college. I made sure of that. I worked double shifts, sometimes triple shifts on holidays, until my hands ached from scraping tartar and my back screamed from leaning over patients all day. Every extra dollar went into 2 accounts, one for Jessica's college tuition and living expenses, and one that she didn't know about. A secret wedding fund I'd been building since she was 15 years old. I never remarried. I never even dated. My entire focus was on giving Jessica the life her father would have wanted for her, and for years I thought we were close. We had our traditions. Sunday brunch at the diner on Maple Street, where we'd split a stack of pancakes and gossip about our week. Shopping trips to the outlet mall, where I'd watch her try on clothes and tell her how beautiful she looked. Movie nights on our old couch with popcorn and whatever romantic comedy she wanted to watch. She would curl up next to me and say, "Mom, when I get married someday, you're going to be right there with me. You're going to help me pick my dress, plan everything, walk me down the aisle since Dad can't." Those words meant everything to me. Jessica graduated from college with a degree in marketing, debt-free thanks to my savings and her partial scholarship. She got a good job at a mid-sized firm downtown, rented a nice apartment with a roommate, and seemed to be building a solid life. I was so proud of her. I would tell my coworkers, my sister Margaret, anyone who would listen, about how well Jessica was doing. My daughter, the college graduate with the professional career, I felt like all the sacrifice had been worth it. She visited regularly in those first 2 years after graduation, usually on weekends. We'd go to our favorite restaurants, catch up on life, and she'd tell me about her work projects and her friends. Everything seemed perfect between us. Then 2 years ago, everything changed. Jessica met Brandon at a corporate networking event. He was 32, worked in finance, and came from what could only be described as serious money. Old money, the kind that came with country club memberships and vacation homes in the Hamptons. The first time Jessica brought him to meet me, I knew something was different. She seemed nervous in a way I'd never seen before. She kept straightening the small decorative pillows on my couch, apologizing for how cramped the apartment was, explaining that I was planning to upgrade soon, which was a lie. Brandon was polite enough, shaking my hand with a firm grip, but his eyes barely met mine. He looked around the apartment with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between curiosity and judgment. But the real shock came when I met Brandon's mother. Carol Whitmore was everything I wasn't. She was in her early 60s but looked at least 10 years younger, thanks to what I assumed was excellent skincare and possibly some work done. Her hair was perfectly styled, honey blonde with expensive highlights. She wore designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent, carried handbags I recognized from magazine advertisements, and had this smile that never quite reached her eyes. The first time we all had dinner together, Brandon's parents invited us to their country club. I remember the panic I felt when Jessica told me where we were going. "I don't have country club clothes," I told her. She waved it off, saying it was casual. But when I arrived in my nicest dress from Macy's clearance section, I realized her definition of casual and mine were very different worlds. Carol greeted me with an air kiss on each cheek, the kind where her lips never actually touch your face, and said in this syrupy sweet voice, "Linda, how lovely to finally meet you." Jessica has told us so much about you. She looked me up and down in one quick sweep, and I watched her eyes catalog everything. My department store dress, my Payless shoes, my drugstore makeup. Then she smiled that calculating smile and said, "You work with teeth, how practical." There was something in the way she said practical that made it sound like an insult disguised as a compliment. Throughout that dinner, Carol dominated the conversation, talking about their recent trip to Europe, their renovations on their lake house, the charity galas they attended. Every time I tried to contribute to the conversation, she would politely listen and then redirect to something else, something I couldn't possibly have experience with. I noticed Jessica changing that night. She corrected my grammar once when I said something incorrectly, which she'd never done before. She laughed a little too hard at Carol's stories. She seemed embarrassed when I mentioned clipping coupons to save money on groceries. The drive home was quiet. I tried to bring it up gently. "Honey, you seem different tonight." She'd snapped at me. "I'm just trying to make a good impression, Mom. Brandon's family is important to him." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. Over the next several months, the changes in Jessica became more pronounced. She started dressing differently, trading her Target wardrobe for pieces from boutiques I couldn't afford to walk into. Her vocabulary changed, suddenly peppered with words like summer as a verb and winter in Aspen. She'd correct herself mid-sentence if she said something that sounded too common. The worst part was how she started treating me. She'd make excuses not to visit, claiming work was busy. When she did come by, she'd check her phone constantly, as if being in my apartment was something to endure rather than enjoy. Once, when I picked her up at her office to go to lunch, she asked me to park around the corner instead of in front of the building. "I don't want people to see your car, Mom," she'd said. "It's kind of embarrassing." That word, embarrassing, started appearing more and more. My apartment was embarrassing. My car was embarrassing. My job was embarrassing. Apparently, I was embarrassing. But I told myself it was just a phase, that Jessica was trying to fit into Brandon's world, and once they were settled, she'd come back to herself. I made excuses for her because that's what mothers do, right? We forgive, we understand, we wait for our children to remember who raised them and how much they were loved. Then came the engagement. Brandon proposed to Jessica at some fancy French restaurant I'd never heard of. I wasn't there for the proposal, wasn't even told it was happening. Jessica called me afterward, her voice high and excited. Mom, he proposed. "I'm getting married!" I cried tears of joy, genuine happiness for my daughter. Finally, I thought, I get to be part of something special with her. We can plan this wedding together, have those mother-daughter moments I dreamed about. I told her I loved her, that I was so happy for her, that we'd start planning right away. She'd said yes, but there was something hesitant in her voice that I chose to ignore. The first wedding planning meeting was held at Carol's house, a sprawling estate that looked like something from a magazine. Jessica had told me to come at 2 in the afternoon. When I arrived, Carol answered the door in casual clothes that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She led me to this enormous dining room where Jessica and Brandon were already seated with another woman I didn't recognize. "This is Vivian," Carol announced, "our wedding planner." I'd arranged everything. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Our wedding planner?" I looked at Jessica, who couldn't quite meet my eyes. "I thought maybe we could plan this together," I'd said carefully. Carol laughed, not unkindly but dismissively. "Linda, darling, modern weddings require professional coordination. I've already secured Vivian. She's the best in the state." That meeting set the tone for everything that followed. Carol had opinions on everything: the venue, the flowers, the color scheme, the guest list. Whenever I tried to suggest something, she'd listen with that patient smile and then explain why her idea was better. I suggested having the ceremony at the Botanical Gardens, where Mark and I got married. Carol wrinkled her nose and said, "How quaint, but we're thinking something more grand." I mentioned some family traditions I'd hoped to incorporate, simple things like the blessing my grandmother used to give. Carol said, "This is a modern celebration, Linda. I don't think our guests would appreciate those old-fashioned customs." And Jessica, my Jessica, just sat there nodding along, sometimes even agreeing with Carol. I felt myself becoming smaller and smaller in that room, my opinions dismissed, my presence tolerated rather than welcomed. When I left that day, I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. I called my sister Margaret and cried. "She's taking over," I told her. "Carol is taking over my daughter's wedding, and Jessica is letting her." Margaret, always practical, said, "Maybe you need to assert yourself more, Linda. Make your presence known." So I tried. I really tried, but every attempt I made was met with resistance or indifference. The humiliation started small, but grew more painful with each passing week. The first major incident happened during dress shopping. Carol had organized an appointment at an exclusive bridal boutique downtown, the kind of place where you needed an appointment just to walk through the door. Jessica texted me the address and time, and I showed up wearing what I thought was appropriate, a nice pantsuit from Macy's that I'd worn to my cousin's wedding last year. The moment I walked in, I knew I'd made a mistake. The boutique was all white marble and crystal chandeliers, with champagne being served to customers on silver trays. Carol was already there with Jessica, both of them in designer casual wear that screamed money. The sales associate, a rail-thin woman named Dominique, looked at me with barely concealed confusion. "Is this the mother of the bride?" she asked Carol, not me. "Or perhaps someone from the catering staff?" I felt my face burn with humiliation. Carol laughed, this tinkling sound like breaking glass. No, this is Linda, Jessica's mother. She's very sweet." That phrase, "she's very sweet," became Carol's go-to description of me, and it always sounded like she was describing a simple-minded child. During the appointment, I tried to be involved. I suggested dresses I thought would look beautiful on Jessica, but Dominique and Carol would exchange glances and redirect to something else. When Jessica finally found a dress she loved, a stunning $15,000 gown that made her look like a princess, I started to cry. My baby girl looked so beautiful, but Carol rushed over with tissues, saying, "Linda, darling, you're going to ruin your makeup. Let's keep the emotions in check, shall we?" As if my tears were embarrassing rather than the natural response of a mother seeing her daughter in a wedding dress. I excused myself to the bathroom, where I locked myself in a stall and sobbed quietly for 10 minutes. When I came out, they were taking photos with the dress, mother and daughter photos, except Carol was playing the role of mother while I was invisible. The engagement party was even worse. It was held at Brandon's parents' estate, this massive mansion with manicured gardens and a fountain in the circular driveway. There were over 150 guests, none of whom I knew. I'd asked Jessica if I could invite my sister and a few close friends, people who'd watched Jessica grow up, but I was told the guest list was already finalized. When I arrived, I was directed to overflow parking in the back, where the catering staff parked. I had to walk around the entire house to get to the front entrance, passing servers carrying trays and struggling in my heels on the gravel path. Inside, Carol held court like a queen, introducing Jessica and Brandon to important people, business associates, society friends, distant relatives with hyphenated last names. When someone asked about Jessica's family, Carol would gesture vaguely in my direction and say, "Oh, that's Jessica's mother, Linda. She's very sweet but quite shy. Keeps to herself mostly." I spent most of that party standing alone near the dessert table, smiling politely at strangers who didn't bother to introduce themselves. At one point, I overheard Carol talking to a group of her friends in the garden. I'd stepped outside for fresh air and heard her voice carrying across the patio. "Well, Jessica's background is a bit humble," Carol was saying. "Single mother, worked a working-class job, you know the type. But the girl has good bone structure and she's smart enough. With the right guidance, she'll fit into our family just fine." Her friends murmured sympathetically, as if Jessica's upbringing was some tragic circumstance that needed to be overcome. One woman said, "How generous of you to take her under your wing, Carol." And Carol replied, "Well, someone has to teach her the right way to do things. Her mother certainly couldn't." I stood frozen behind a topiary, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. This woman who'd known my daughter for less than 2 years, was talking about me like I was some negligent failure. Like raising Jessica alone, working myself to exhaustion to give her every opportunity, was something to be ashamed of. I wanted to march out there and confront her, but I didn't. I was too afraid of making a scene, too afraid of proving Carol right that I didn't belong in this world. Instead, I went back inside, found Jessica laughing with some of Brandon's college friends, and told her I wasn't feeling well. "I'm going to head home early, honey." She barely looked at me. "Okay, Mom, feel better." No hug, no concern, just a dismissive wave as she turned back to her conversation. The guest list drama came next. I'd made a list of 25 people I wanted to invite, modest compared to Brandon's family's 200-plus guests, but these were people who mattered. My sister Margaret, my best friend Denise from work, who'd been there for us after Mark died, my cousin Rachel, who used to babysit Jessica, some colleagues from the dental office who'd watched Jessica grow up, a few of our neighbors who'd helped us in hard times. I presented the list at a planning meeting, and Carol looked at it like I'd handed her a piece of garbage. "Linda," she said slowly, "we're trying to maintain a certain aesthetic for this wedding. I'm not sure your guests would really fit the vibe we're going for." I felt anger flare in my chest. What vibe would that be, Carol? She smiled that condescending smile. Sophisticated, elegant, refined. These are words that meant your people aren't good enough. Jessica was sitting right there, and I looked at her, waiting for her to defend me. to say that these people who loved her deserved to be there. But she just bit her lip and looked down at her phone. Mom, maybe we could trim it down a bit. The venue has capacity limits. That was a lie. We hadn't even chosen a venue yet. I pushed back. These people helped raise you, Jessica. They celebrated every birthday, every graduation. They were there when your father died, and we had nothing. Jessica's face hardened. Mom, please don't make this difficult. We're trying to create a cohesive guest experience. Cohesive guest experience. Those weren't her words. Those were Carol's words coming out of my daughter's mouth. In the end, my guest list was cut to 5 people. 5. My sister Margaret, my friend Denise, and 3 others. Everyone else was deemed not refined enough for Brandon's family's standards. But I kept quiet. I kept swallowing my hurt and anger because I didn't want to lose my daughter completely. I told myself that once the wedding was over, once Jessica was settled in her marriage, things would go back to normal. She'd remember who I was, what I'd done for her, how much I loved her. I just had to get through this wedding, so I decided to do something special, something that would show Jessica how much I believed in her and her future. I was going to book her dream venue. Jessica had been talking about the Rosewood Estate since she was a teenager. It was this gorgeous, historic mansion with sprawling gardens, vintage architecture, and a reputation for hosting the most beautiful weddings in the state. It was also notoriously expensive and booked years in advance. The deposit alone was $200,000, with additional costs for the actual event bringing the total to around $350,000. It was the kind of venue that only the extremely wealthy could afford. I'd been saving money since Jessica was 15 in a secret account she knew nothing about. It started with Mark's life insurance payout, $180,000 after we paid his final medical bills. I couldn't touch that money for regular expenses because it felt sacred, like Mark's last gift to us. So I put it in a high-yield savings account and added to it whenever I could. Every tax refund, every overtime shift, every bonus from work went into that account. Over 13 years, with compound interest and my additions, it had grown to just over $210,000. I called it Jessica's wedding fund in my mind, though I'd never told her about it. I wanted it to be a surprise, a way to give her something spectacular, something that would make all my years of sacrifice worth it. I made an appointment with the Rosewood Estate on a Tuesday morning when I had the day off work. The coordinator, a professional woman named Miranda, showed me around the property. It was even more beautiful than the photos online. The main ballroom had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking rose gardens that would be in full bloom in October, which was when Jessica wanted to get married. There was a vintage gazebo for the ceremony, a terrace for cocktail hour, and staff quarters that could accommodate the wedding party. It's absolutely perfect, I told Miranda, tears in my eyes. This is exactly what my daughter has always dreamed of. Miranda smiled warmly. She was kind, treating me with respect, unlike how Carol's people treated me. When we sat down to discuss pricing, I didn't flinch at the numbers. I'd prepared for this. The deposit is $200,000, fully refundable if canceled within 30 days. Then partially refundable until 60 days before the event. After that, the deposit is non-refundable. I nodded. I understand. Let's book it. I wrote the check right there, my hand shaking slightly as I signed away nearly everything I'd saved for over a decade. But watching Miranda process the paperwork, seeing Jessica's name and wedding date inked onto the Rosewood Estate's exclusive calendar, I felt a surge of joy and pride. This was it. This was the moment where I proved to everyone, to Carol, to Brandon's family, to Jessica herself, that I could provide something extraordinary. I might drive an old car and wear clearance rack clothes, but I could give my daughter a $200,000 venue. I clutched the contract and receipt as I walked back to my Honda Civic, already imagining Jessica's face when I told her. She'd cry, she'd hug me, she'd realize that her mother might not be sophisticated or refined, but I loved her more than anyone else ever could. I decided to reveal the surprise at the next planning meeting, which was scheduled for that Thursday at Carol's house. I could barely contain my excitement for 2 days. I called my sister Margaret and told her what I'd done. She was shocked. Linda, that's your entire retirement. I know, but it's worth it. Jessica will finally see how much I love her. Margaret was quiet for a moment, then said, I hope you're right. I hope she appreciates it. I assured her that of course Jessica would appreciate it. This was her dream venue. How could she not be thrilled? Thursday arrived and I dressed carefully, wanting to look my best for the big reveal. I wore my nicest dress, did my makeup more carefully than usual, and drove to Carol's mansion with the envelope containing the contract on my passenger seat. I kept looking at it at red lights, smiling. This was going to change everything. When I arrived, everyone was already gathered in Carol's dining room. Jessica, Brandon, Carol, and Vivian, the wedding planner. They looked up when I walked in, and I noticed something strange. They all seemed annoyed that I was there. Carol's smile was tighter than usual. "Linda," she said, "we weren't expecting you today," I faltered. "Jessica texted me yesterday with the time and place." Carol and Jessica exchanged a glance. "Well, you're here now," Jessica said flatly. "We were just discussing floral arrangements." I sat down at the table, my envelope clutched in my hands, my heart racing with anticipation. I waited for a break in the conversation about centerpieces and floral arrangements, watching Carol and Vivian discuss rose versus peony arrangements like it was a matter of national importance. Finally, there was a pause, and I seized the moment. "I have something I'd like to share," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. Everyone turned to look at me. Carol raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Jessica looked wary. Brandon seemed confused, and Vivian just waited politely. I stood up, my legs shaking, and placed the envelope on the table in front of Jessica. "Honey, I've been keeping a secret from you for a very long time. I wanted to do something special for you, something that would make your wedding day absolutely perfect." Jessica stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Mom, what is this?" "Just open it, sweetheart." With hesitant fingers, Jessica opened the envelope and pulled out the contract. Her eyes scanned the first page, then widened. "The Rosewood Estate," she read aloud. "Mom, what?" Her voice trailed off as she got to the payment confirmation page. "You booked the Rosewood Estate?" I was beaming, tears already forming in my eyes. "I did. I paid the full deposit. $200,000. Your dream venue is yours, baby. Everything is secured for October 14th. I waited for the scream of joy, the tears of happiness, the hug that would make all of this worth it. But instead, Jessica's face went pale, then flushed bright red. Her hands started shaking as she held the contract. Brandon leaned over to look at the paperwork, his expression shifting from confusion to something like horror. Carol stood up so fast, her chair scraped against the floor. "The Rosewood Estate," Carol said, her voice tight. "You booked the Rosewood Estate?" "Yes," I said, my smile faltering. "It's Jessica's dream venue. I've been saving for years to be able to afford this." The silence in the room was suffocating. Jessica was staring at the contract, her jaw clenched. Carol's face had gone from its usual composed mask to something cold and furious. Vivienne, the wedding planner, looked between all of us with growing discomfort. Finally, Jessica spoke, and her voice was shaking with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. "Anger? Panic? Mom, what did you do?" "I don't understand," I said, my excitement curdling into confusion. "I got you your dream venue, sweetheart. This is what you've always wanted." Jessica stood up abruptly, the contract crumpling in her grip. "The Rosewood? Mom, do you have any idea?" She cut herself off, looking at Carol. Carol's lips were pressed into a thin line. She stepped forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Linda, this is quite a surprise. We've actually been in negotiations to book the Rosewood ourselves. I've been working with their events coordinator for months, trying to secure that exact date." My stomach dropped. "You were? But I just booked it 2 days ago. They never mentioned anyone else was interested." Carol's smile was razor sharp. "Well, clearly someone got there first. How resourceful of you." The way she said resourceful made it sound like an accusation. Jessica was pacing now, her heels clicking against Carol's marble floor. "Mom, you don't have that kind of money. What did you do? Did you take out a loan? Are you in debt?" "No, honey. I have savings," I tried to explain. But she cut me off. "Savings? You drive a car that's falling apart. You live in that tiny apartment. You clip coupons from the Sunday paper. Where could you possibly have gotten $200,000? Her words felt like slaps. "I've been saving since you were 15, I said quietly. "Your father's life insurance, my overtime pay, every bonus, every tax refund. I've been putting it away for your future, for your wedding." Jessica's face twisted into something I didn't recognize. "This is so typical of you," she spat. "Always trying to play the martyr, always trying to be the hero." Brandon stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Jessica, calm down." "Maybe we can," but Jessica whirled on him. "No, Brandon. You don't understand. This is what she does. She sacrifices and suffers, and then holds it over my head for the rest of my life." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "What are you talking about? I've never held anything over your head." "You do it constantly," Jessica shouted. "Poor mom who worked so hard. Poor mom who gave up everything. Poor mom who never remarried because she was too busy being a saint. Every conversation, every interaction, it's always about how much you've sacrificed for me." I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. These were words I'd never expected to hear from my daughter, venom I didn't know she'd been storing up. "Honey, I only ever wanted you to have a good life. And you've made sure I could never forget what it cost you," she shot back. Carol placed a hand on Jessica's shoulder, a gesture that looked supportive, but felt possessive. "Jessica, dear, you're upset. Let's all take a breath." But Jessica shook her head. "No, this needs to be said." She turned back to me, her eyes blazing. "Mom, Carol has been planning a surprise for Brandon and me. She was going to book the Rosewood Estate as her gift to us. She's been coordinating with their events team, working out all the details. And you just swooped in and ruined it. The pieces started clicking into place. Carol wanted to be the hero. She wanted to be the one who gave Jessica her dream venue. And I'd stolen her thunder. But this wasn't about Carol's ego. This was about my daughter's wedding. I paid for the venue, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. With money I saved for over a decade specifically for this purpose. Jessica, this is my gift to you. I don't want your gift, Jessica said coldly. Not if it comes with a lifetime of guilt trips about how much it cost you. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Brandon looked deeply uncomfortable. Vivian had actually stood up and moved toward the door, clearly wanting to escape this family drama. Carol's expression was triumphant behind a mask of concern. And I just stood there, holding the edge of the table to keep myself upright. Carol's voice cut through the tension, smooth as silk. Linda, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Jessica is clearly overwhelmed right now. No, Jessica said firmly. We're discussing it now. She looked at Carol, then at me, then took a deep breath. Mom, we need to talk. Outside. She walked toward the patio doors, expecting me to follow. I looked at Brandon, hoping for some support, some indication that he thought this was as crazy as I did. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. Carol was already sitting back down, pulling out her phone, dismissing me. I followed Jessica outside, my legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. The patio overlooked Carol's immaculate gardens, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of landscaping stretching out before us. Jessica walked to the far edge, her arms crossed over her chest, her back to me. When she finally turned around, her face was composed, cold, nothing like the warm daughter I'd raised. Mom, I'm going to be very clear with you because apparently subtlety doesn't work. What's that supposed to mean? For the past 2 years, I've been trying to build a life with Brandon. A real life. Not living paycheck to paycheck, not worrying about money constantly, not being the poor girl who has to work twice as hard as everyone else. I opened my mouth to respond, but she held up a hand. Brandon's family has money. Real money. They have connections, influence, social standing. Being part of that family means something. And Carol has been wonderful to me. She's introduced me to people, taught me things, helped me understand how this world works. This world, I repeated. You mean the world where your own mother is an embarrassment? Jessica flinched but didn't deny it. You don't understand how things work in their circles, Mom. Image matters. Presentation matters. And every time you show up in your clearance rack clothes, driving that awful car, talking about sales and coupons, I die a little inside because I know what people are thinking. And what are they thinking? That I'm with Brandon for his money. That I'm some gold digger from a poor background who got lucky. That I don't really belong. The pain in my chest was so intense I thought I might be having a heart attack. So I'm the problem. Your mother who raised you, who loved you, who gave you everything. I'm the thing that makes you look bad. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed hard. Carol has been planning to give us the Rosewood as her gift. She was going to announce it at a party next month, make this big reveal in front of everyone important. It was going to be her way of welcoming me into the family, showing everyone that I'm worthy of being Brandon's wife. And now you've ruined it. I've ruined it? I'm giving you the exact same venue. It shouldn't matter who pays for it. But it does matter, Jessica cried. Don't you see? If Carol gives it to us, it means we're being embraced by Brandon's family. If you give it to us, it looks like charity. It looks like my poor mother scraped together her life savings because I couldn't afford my own wedding. Is that really how you see it? I asked, my voice breaking. Or is that how Carol has taught you to see it? Don't put this on Carol. She's been more of a mother to me these past 2 years than you have. Those words destroyed something fundamental inside me. More of a mother? I raised you alone after your father died. I worked myself to exhaustion. I gave up everything, my social life, any chance at my own happiness, everything so you could have opportunities. And some woman who's known you for 2 years is more of a mother to me? She acts like it, Jessica said, and her voice was quiet now, almost sad. She doesn't make me feel guilty for wanting nice things. She doesn't make me feel bad for trying to improve my life. She celebrates my success instead of reminding me how much it cost her to get me there. I started, but Jessica cut me off. You do, Mom. You do it all the time. Every conversation circles back to your sacrifices. How you worked double shifts. How you never bought yourself anything nice. How you saved every penny. I get it. You gave up a lot for me. But I never asked you to. Those words landed like a physical blow. You never asked me to? You were a child. Children don't ask their parents to take care of them. Parents just do it because they love their children. Well, maybe I needed a parent who loved herself too, Jessica said. Maybe I needed a mother who showed me that women can have their own lives, their own happiness, instead of martyring themselves for their kids. Is that what Carol tells you? That I'm a martyr? I could hear the desperation in my own voice. Jessica, I loved being your mother. Taking care of you wasn't a sacrifice. It was a privilege. Then why do you never let me forget what it cost you? We stood there in terrible silence, the gulf between us wider than it had ever been. Finally, I asked the question I was terrified to hear the answer to. What are you saying, Jessica? What do you want? She took a deep breath, and when she looked at me, her eyes were hard. I'm saying that Brandon and I have made a decision. Carol is going to fill the traditional mother of the bride role at the wedding. She'll be in the family photos, she'll give the mother-daughter speech, she'll do the mother-daughter dance. But that's my role, I whispered. I'm your mother, and you can still come to the wedding, Jessica said quickly. As a guest. You'll be invited, you'll have a nice seat, you can watch and celebrate with everyone else. But the ceremonial mother duties? Those are going to Carol, the world tilted on its axis. You're replacing me, with your fiancé's mother, at your own wedding. Mom, don't be dramatic. I'm not replacing you. I'm just being realistic about what works best for everyone. What works best, or what Carol wants. Both, Jessica said firmly. Look, Carol has invested so much in this wedding, in helping me plan everything, teaching me what I need to know. She deserves to be recognized for that. And frankly, Mom, having you in that central role would be... She paused, searching for words. Would be what? Embarrassing? Jessica's silence was answer enough. She didn't deny it. She just stood there, arms crossed, looking at me like I was a problem to be managed rather than her mother. And the venue? I asked. What about the $200,000 venue I just paid for with my life savings? Jessica looked at the contract still crumpled in her hand, then back at me. We'll use the venue, obviously. You already paid for it. It would be wasteful not to. But Carol will be credited as the one who arranged it. We'll tell people she coordinated everything, made it happen. You can just, fade into the background. Fade into the background at my daughter's wedding, using the venue I paid $200,000 for. While another woman took credit and played mother of the bride, something inside me cracked. Not broke, but cracked, like ice on a frozen lake when the temperature starts to rise. I could feel something fundamental shifting in my chest, a coldness spreading through my veins that had nothing to do with the evening air. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and for the first time in her life, I didn't recognize her. This wasn't the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. This wasn't the teenager who cried in my arms when she didn't make the cheerleading squad. This wasn't even the college student who called me every Sunday just to talk. This was a stranger wearing my daughter's face, speaking words that had been carefully planted by a manipulative woman who saw people as social props. And the worst part? Jessica had let it happen. She had chosen this. Chosen status over love. Chosen appearances over authenticity. Chosen Carol over me. Okay, I said quietly. Jessica's eyebrows shot up. She'd clearly been expecting more of a fight. Okay, just like that? Just like that, I repeated. I turned and walked back toward the house. Jessica followed me, her heels clicking rapidly. Mom, wait. Where are you going? Home, I said simply. I need to think. Think about what? Jessica's voice had an edge of panic now. Mom, you're not going to do anything crazy, right? The venue is booked. Everything is set. Crazy? I stopped and turned to face her. No, Jessica, I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm going to go home, sit down, and really consider what you've told me tonight. Consider it? What's there to consider? You heard me. This is what's happening. I smiled, and it must have been unsettling because Jessica actually took a step back. You're right. This is what's happening. Excuse me, I need to leave now. I walked back into Carol's dining room, where Brandon, Carol, and Vivian were pretending not to have been listening at the patio doors. I picked up my purse from the chair where I'd left it, that envelope with all my hopes and dreams for my daughter's wedding still sitting on the table. Carol stood up, her expression oozing false concern. Linda, dear, I hope you understand this isn't personal. We all just want what's best for Jessica. Of course, I said pleasantly. What's best for Jessica. Always. I'll see myself out. The drive home was a blur. I don't remember getting into my car, don't remember the road I took, don't remember pulling into my apartment parking lot. I do remember sitting in my driver's seat for almost an hour, staring at nothing, my mind replaying every moment of that conversation. You're too embarrassing. Carol has been more of a mother to me. Fade into the background. I never asked you to sacrifice for me. Each phrase was a knife, and they just kept stabbing over and over. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Text messages from Jessica. Mom, please don't be upset. This is for the best. Mom, you're being childish about this. Mom, answer me. I turned my phone face down and went inside. My apartment felt different that night. Smaller, shabbier, a monument to all my years of sacrifice that apparently meant nothing. I looked at the worn couch where Jessica and I used to watch movies together. The kitchen table where I'd helped her with homework for 12 years. The bookshelf full of photos of us, mother and daughter, smiling and happy. All of it felt like a lie now, a fiction I'd been telling myself while my daughter secretly resented every sacrifice I'd made. I sat down at that kitchen table and pulled out the folder I kept with all my important documents. Inside was the original contract from the Rosewood Estate, my copy. I read through it carefully, particularly the cancellation policy section. Full refund if cancelled within 30 days. Partial refund until 60 days before the event. After that, complete forfeiture of the deposit. I had booked the venue 2 days ago. That meant I had 28 days left to get my full $200,000 back. 28 days to make a decision that would either destroy my relationship with my daughter forever or cement my role as her doormat for the rest of my life. I thought about Mark, my late husband, and what he would say if he could see this situation. Mark had been a gentleman, kind and loving, but he'd also had a spine of steel when it came to being treated with respect. He would have been heartbroken by Jessica's words, but he also would have known that allowing someone to treat you as less than human, even your own child, wasn't love. It was self-destruction. I picked up my phone and called my sister Margaret. She answered on the second ring. "Linda? What happened? Did you tell her about the venue?" "I told her," I said, my voice hollow. "And?" Margaret's excitement was palpable. "She told me I'm too embarrassing to be the mother of the bride. Carol is taking that role. I'm invited to attend as a guest." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Margaret?" "I'm here," my sister said, and her voice was shaking with rage. "I'm just trying to process what you just said. Did that ungrateful little brat actually tell you that you're too embarrassing for her wedding after you just spent $200,000 on her venue?" "She did." "And what did you say?" "I told her okay." Margaret exploded. "Okay? Linda Marie Morrison, please tell me you did not just roll over and accept this." "I didn't roll over," I said calmly. I acknowledged her decision and came home. And now I'm looking at the cancellation policy for the Rosewood Estate. There was a sharp intake of breath. "Oh," Margaret said. "Oh, you're thinking about it." "I'm thinking about a lot of things," I admitted. "I'm thinking about how I spent 13 years saving money that was supposed to be my retirement. I'm thinking about how I just signed away every penny to give my daughter her dream wedding. And I'm thinking about how she thanked me by telling me I'm an embarrassment who needs to fade into the background." "Linda," Margaret said carefully, "if you cancel that venue, there's no going back. You understand that, right? Jessica will never forgive you. And if I don't cancel it," I said, "I'll never forgive myself. For 28 years, I've put Jessica first. Her needs, her wants, her happiness, all of it came before mine. I told myself that's what good mothers do. But Margaret, good mothers also teach their children about respect, about gratitude, about consequences. And I failed at that. I failed to teach Jessica that you don't get to treat people like garbage, especially people who love you, and still expect them to give you everything you want. So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to sleep on it," I said. "And tomorrow I'm going to make some calls. To the venue, among others." I slept terribly that night, tossing and turning, my dreams full of Jessica's accusations and Carol's smug face. When I woke up at 6 in the morning, I felt strangely clear-headed, like a fog had lifted. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and wrote out a list of everything I needed to know. First, I called Robert Chen, a lawyer who came to our dental office for cleanings. I'd gotten to know him over the years, and he'd always told me if I ever needed legal advice to call him. "Robert," I said when he answered, "it's Linda Morrison. I need to ask you about contract law." He listened as I explained the situation, not the emotional parts, just the facts. "I booked a venue, paid a deposit, the contract is in my name only, and I'm considering canceling within the refund period." "Linda," he said after I finished, "legally speaking, you're completely within your rights. The contract is in your name. You paid with your own funds, and canceling within the specified period is exactly what that clause is for. Even though it's for my daughter's wedding? Even though, unless her name is on the contract or she contributed financially, she has no legal claim to that booking. You could cancel it tomorrow, and she couldn't do anything about it legally." "What about morally?" I asked. "That's not a legal question," he said gently. "That's something only you can answer. But Linda, I will say this. I've seen a lot of family disputes in my career, and the ones that hurt the most are when people allow themselves to be mistreated because they're afraid of the consequences of standing up for themselves. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is show them that actions have consequences." After I hung up with Robert, I called the Rosewood Estate. A woman named Miranda answered. the same coordinator I'd worked with before. "Mrs. Morrison, how lovely to hear from you. Is everything all right with your booking? I have some questions about the cancellation policy," I said. "Of course. As stated in your contract, you have a 30-day window for a full refund of your deposit. After that, we offer a partial refund on a sliding scale until 60 days before the event. After that point, the deposit is non-refundable. If I canceled today, how long would it take to process the refund? 5 to 7 business days back to the account the payment came from. And if I canceled, would that date become available for other bookings?" "Immediately. Actually, we have a wait list for that specific date. Several couples have inquired. Can you tell me who's on that wait list?" "I'm sorry, that information is confidential, but I can tell you we'd have no trouble rebooking that date within hours of a cancellation." I thanked her and hung up. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a personal day from work, called in and told them I needed time for a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. This was an emergency, just not the kind they were probably imagining. I spent that entire day researching, planning, and thinking. I looked up Jessica's financial situation as much as I could from public information. She and Brandon had good jobs, but not wealthy by any means. They were living in a nice apartment, but had student loans, car payments, credit card debt. The kind of debt that young professionals accumulate. Without the Rosewood Estate paid for, could they afford the wedding Carol had been planning? I made a spreadsheet, itemizing all the costs I could find from wedding planning websites. Photographer. $8,000 for the top-tier packages Carol would insist on. Flowers. At least $20,000 for the elaborate arrangements I'd seen in Vivian's mock-ups. Catering. $150 per person for 300 guests. That's $45,000. The dress Jessica had chosen, $15,000. Band, another $12,000. When I added it all up, excluding the venue, the wedding Carol had planned would cost at least $150,000. Could Jessica and Brandon afford that on top of a venue? Not unless Carol was paying for most of it. And if Carol had been planning to provide the venue as her big gesture, was she planning to pay for all the other things too? I pulled out my phone and did something risky. I scrolled through Jessica's Instagram, looking at her recent posts. There, from 3 weeks ago, was a photo of her and Carol at a bridal show. The caption read, "So grateful for my future Emil, who's been helping plan every detail of my dream wedding. Couldn't do this without her." The comments were full of people praising Carol's generosity, saying how lucky Jessica was, how beautiful everything was going to be. Not one mention of me. Not one acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, Jessica's actual mother had contributed something to her life. I screenshot the post, then I went back further and found more. Jessica at Carol's Country Club. Thank you, Carol, for the membership sponsorship. Jessica in a new designer outfit. Carol's impeccable taste strikes again. Jessica at a spa. Best future MIL, treating me like a daughter. Every post was a little knife. Carol's been more of a mother to me. The words echoed in my head. I kept scrolling until I found what I was looking for. A post from a year ago, before the engagement, before things had gotten quite so bad. It was a photo of me and Jessica at her college graduation. The caption read, "Couldn't have done any of this without my amazing mom who sacrificed everything to get me here. I love you, Mom." I stared at that post for a long time. 1 year ago, Jessica had loved me publicly, had acknowledged my sacrifices with what seemed like genuine gratitude. What had changed? Carol. Carol had spent 2 years systematically turning my daughter against me, making her ashamed of where she came from, teaching her that people like me were embarrassing obstacles to be managed rather than humans to be loved. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello, Mrs. Morrison? This is Emily Whitmore, Brandon's sister." I sat up straight. "Emily." "Yes, hi. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." She sounded nervous. "I heard about what happened at my mother's house yesterday. Jessica called me, upset, saying you'd been difficult about the venue. I'm sure that's how she framed it." There was a pause. "Mrs. Morrison, I want to be very clear with you. My mother has a pattern. She did this exact same thing to Brandon's previous girlfriend, found ways to undermine her, make her feel inadequate, until the poor girl broke up with Brandon because she couldn't handle the constant criticism. Your mother broke them up? On purpose?" Emily sighed. My mother believes that the women who marry into our family need to be molded, shaped into what she considers appropriate. If they come from money and status, she tolerates them. If they don't, she either breaks them or remakes them. Jessica chose to be remade. Why are you telling me this? Because it's wrong, Emily said firmly. And because if you cancel that venue booking, I want you to know that you're not being cruel or petty. You're teaching Jessica something my mother should have taught her years ago. That you can't treat people like disposable objects and still expect their generosity. There was something else in her tone, something expectant. Emily, are you hoping I'll cancel? The Rosewood Estate is my dream venue too, Emily admitted. I tried to book it 6 months ago for my own wedding next year, but it was already taken. By you. If you cancel, it becomes available again. And unlike my brother's wedding, I would be honored to have you attend as a respected guest, not someone shoved in a corner. We talked for almost an hour. Emily told me everything. How Carol had been furious when she found out I'd booked the Rosewood. How she'd spent days coaching Jessica on what to say to me. How the whole embarrassing mother narrative had been carefully constructed to justify pushing me out. But she also told me something else. Jessica and Brandon's financial situation was precarious. They'd already put deposits down on everything. Photographer, flowers, band, dress alterations, all of it assuming the venue was free. If they had to pay for a venue too, they'd go into serious debt. Or they'd have to scale everything back dramatically, which would humiliate Carol in front of her society friends. After I hung up with Emily, I sat in the darkness of my apartment and made my decision. I picked up my phone and called the Rosewood Estate one more time. Miranda answered, friendly and professional as always. Miranda, this is Linda Morrison. I need to cancel my booking for October 14th. There was a pause. Oh, Mrs. Morrison, I'm so sorry to hear that. May I ask the reason for the cancellation? Family circumstances have changed, I said simply. I no longer feel comfortable proceeding with this booking. I understand. Let me pull up your contract. Yes, you're still well within the 30-day full refund window. I can process this immediately. Your $200,000 will be refunded to your account within 5 to 7 business days. Thank you. And Miranda, one more thing, yes? That wait list you mentioned, is Emily Whitmore on it? She is actually. She's first on the list. Please call her immediately and let her know the date is available. I have a feeling she'll be very happy. Consider it done, Mrs. Morrison. And I'm truly sorry your event didn't work out. It didn't work out, I repeated softly. No, I suppose it didn't. I hung up and sat in the silence of my apartment. It was done. The venue was canceled. My $200,000 was coming back to me. And Jessica's perfect wedding, the one planned around a venue she thought was guaranteed, was about to implode. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired and sad and strangely free. For the first time in 28 years, I had chosen myself over my daughter's wants. And it was terrifying and liberating all at once. I knew I had about 2 hours before the Rosewood Estate called Jessica and Brandon to inform them of the cancellation. Standard procedure according to Miranda, since they'd been listed as the event contacts even though the contract was in my name only. I used that time to prepare. I called my sister Margaret and told her what I'd done. She was silent for a long moment, then said, I'm proud of you, Linda. Whatever happens next, I'm proud of you. I called my friend Denise and asked if I could stay at her place for a few days. I had a feeling my apartment was about to become ground zero for a family explosion. Then I packed a bag with essentials and sat down to wait. The call came at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon. Jessica's name flashed on my phone screen. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. Hello? Mom! Jessica's voice was tight, controlled, dangerous. I just got a very interesting phone call from the Rosewood Estate. Oh, they said our booking has been canceled. That the person who made the reservation requested a full refund. There was a pause, heavy with expectation. Yes, I said calmly. I canceled it this morning. The explosion was instantaneous. You did what? I canceled the venue booking. It was in my name, paid with my money, and I decided I no longer wished to proceed with it. Mom, you can't just cancel our wedding venue. Actually, Jessica, I can. And I did. The contract was solely in my name. You have no legal claim to that booking. There was muffled talking in the background, Brandon's voice saying something I couldn't make out, then Carol's sharp tone. Jessica came back on the line, her voice shaking. This is insane. This is cruel. You're punishing me because I hurt your feelings? I'm not punishing you, I said, still calm. I'm simply withdrawing my financial support from an event where I'm not wanted. You told me I was too embarrassing to be your mother at your wedding, that I should fade into the background while another woman took my place. I've decided to respect your wishes. I'm fading away completely. You're being a child, Jessica spat. A petty, spiteful child. And you're being an ungrateful daughter who's forgotten where she came from. But that's okay, Jessica. You don't have to remember anymore. You can have the wedding you want, with Carol as your mother figure, funded however you can manage it. Just without my venue and without my money. Mom, please, Jessica's voice cracked. We've already put deposits down on everything. The photographer, the flowers, the dress. Everything was planned around having the rosewood. Then you should have been nicer to the person who paid for the rosewood, I said, and I hung up. My phone immediately started ringing again. I turned it off. The silence was deafening. I sat there for a moment, then picked up my packed bag and left my apartment. I didn't know when I'd be back, but I knew I needed distance from whatever storm was about to break. At Denise's house, I finally turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls. 32 text messages. I scrolled through them, not responding, just reading. Jessica's messages started angry, then became pleading, then angry again. Mom, how could you do this to me? This is my wedding. You're ruining my life. Please call me back. We need to fix this. Brandon's messages were more measured but equally desperate. Mrs. Morrison, please reconsider. We can work something out. My mother is very upset. Please, let's talk about this like adults. Carol's messages were the most interesting. Linda, this behavior is absolutely unacceptable. You will call me immediately. We need to resolve this situation before it gets out of hand. As if she had any authority over me at all. But there was one message that made me smile. It was from Emily. Mrs. Morrison, I just got a call from the Rosewood Estate. Thank you doesn't seem like enough, but thank you. I'm booking it right now for my wedding. And I meant what I said. You're invited with honor and respect. That message, that single message, made everything worth it. The next day I went to work. I needed normalcy, needed to focus on something other than my imploding family. My coworkers noticed I seemed different, lighter somehow, and a few asked if I was okay. I'm figuring that out, I told them honestly. At lunch, I finally listened to the voicemails. Most were more of the same angry demands, tearful pleading, guilt trips about how I was destroying Jessica's happiness. But one voicemail stood out. It was from Brandon's father, William Whitmore. Mrs. Morrison, this is William Whitmore. I want you to know that I had no idea about the situation with the venue or how my wife and your daughter had been treating you. My son just explained everything to me, and I'm appalled. Carol has gone too far this time. I want to apologize on behalf of my family for the disrespect you've endured. What you do with that venue booking is entirely your decision, and frankly, I don't blame you for canceling it. I hope you'll accept my apology, even if you choose not to restore the booking. I saved that voicemail. At least one member of Brandon's family had decency. That evening, there was a knock on Denise's door. She looked through the peephole and turned to me with wide eyes. It's Jessica and Brandon. And Carol. Do you want me to send them away? No, I said, standing up. Let them in. I'm not hiding. Denise opened the door, and the three of them swept in like an avenging army. Jessica looked terrible, her eyes red and swollen from crying, her hair unwashed, wearing sweatpants I recognized from college. Brandon looked exhausted and uncomfortable. Carol looked furious, her perfect composure cracked around the edges. Linda, Carol started immediately, we need to discuss this situation like mature adults. I am being mature, I said, gesturing for them to sit. They remained standing. I made a decision about my own money and my own contractual obligations. There's nothing immature about that. You're destroying Jessica's wedding out of spite, Carol snapped. I'm not destroying anything. Jessica can still get married. She just needs to find a different venue and figure out how to pay for it. Mom, please, Jessica said, her voice breaking. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I said those things. I was stressed, and Carol was in my ear, and I didn't mean it. You didn't mean it, I repeated. Which part didn't you mean, Jessica? The part where you said I was too embarrassing for your wedding? The part where you said Carol has been more of a mother to you? The part where you told me to fade into the background? Because you said all of those things very clearly. I was upset, Jessica cried. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. Do they? I looked at her calmly. Because I've been upset plenty of times over the past 2 years. Every time you corrected my grammar in public. Every time you asked me to park around the corner so your friends wouldn't see my car. Every time you cut my guest list because my friends weren't refined enough. And I never once told you that you were an embarrassment to me. Mrs. Morrison. Brandon stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. I understand you're hurt. What my mother and Jessica said was wrong. But canceling the venue 3 months before the wedding, that's putting us in an impossible position. We've spent over $60,000 on deposits for other vendors. Without a venue, all of that money is wasted. That sounds like a planning problem, I said. Perhaps you should have secured the venue yourselves before spending money on other things. But we thought it was secured, Brandon said desperately. You booked it. We thought that meant it was ours. You thought wrong, I said simply. The booking was in my name, paid with my money, and you'd made it very clear I wasn't a valued part of this wedding. Why would I continue to finance an event where I'm treated as an embarrassment? Carol's composure finally snapped completely. You selfish, bitter woman. You can't stand that Jessica has found a better life, that she's moving up in the world beyond your lower-class roots. You're jealous that she doesn't need you anymore, so you're sabotaging her happiness. I turned to Carol, and my voice went ice cold. You have spent 2 years poisoning my daughter against me. You saw a young woman who loved her mother, and you systematically destroyed that relationship because you can't stand anyone you consider beneath you. You wanted to replace me as Jessica's mother, and congratulations, you succeeded. But you don't get to also take my money. You don't get to erase me and steal from me. I'm not paying $200,000 for the privilege of being disrespected. This is extortion, Carol hissed. This is boundaries, I corrected. Something you clearly don't understand. Jessica collapsed onto Denise's couch, sobbing. My wedding is ruined. My whole life is ruined. Your wedding can still happen, I said, not unkindly. Just not at the Rosewood Estate and not with my money. You have options, Jessica. You can postpone and save up. You can scale back and choose a more affordable venue. You can ask Carol to fund it, since she's so eager to play mother of the bride. At the mention of funding, Carol's face went carefully blank. Actually, she said slowly, we need to discuss budget. Brandon, your father has put a cap on what we're contributing. Given the circumstances. Brandon's head whipped toward his mother. What? You said we were covered. We are covered for a reasonable amount. But the wedding is planned, with all the vendors already booked. That's over budget now, without the venue paid for. Brandon looked stricken. Mom, you said you'd take care of everything if we couldn't afford it. I said I'd help, Carol snapped. I didn't say I'd fund a $250,000 wedding. That was contingent on the venue being provided. She shot me a venomous look, as if I'd deliberately sabotaged her plans. Which in a way I had. So neither of you can pay for this wedding, Jessica said slowly, looking between Carol and me. Both of you led me to believe my dream wedding would happen, and now it can't. I didn't lead you to believe anything, I said quietly. I booked you a venue and gave it to you as a gift. You responded by telling me I was too embarrassing to be your mother. Actions have consequences, Jessica. You're learning that now. But I'm your daughter, Jessica sobbed. You're supposed to love me unconditionally. I do love you unconditionally, I said, and I felt tears forming in my own eyes. But unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional tolerance of mistreatment. I will always love you, Jessica. But I don't have to fund your wedding, especially when you've made it clear you don't want me there as your mother. Brandon put his arm around Jessica, looking lost. Mrs. Morrison, is there anything we can do to fix this? Any way to restore the booking? The booking has already been transferred to someone else, I said. Emily Whitmore booked it this morning for her wedding next year. Carol's face went sheet white. Emily! My Emily has the Rosewood. Brandon looked confused. Emily's getting married? Since when? Since she got engaged 6 months ago, Carol said faintly. But she told me she couldn't book the Rosewood. It was already taken. It was, I said, by me. And now it's hers. You gave our venue to Emily, Jessica whispered. I gave my venue to someone who will treat me with respect, I corrected. Emily invited me to her wedding as an honored guest, not as an embarrassment to be hidden in the back row. The room fell silent, except for Jessica's quiet crying. Finally, Carol stood up, straightening her designer jacket with shaking hands. This isn't over, Linda. You've made a very big mistake. The only mistake I made was allowing you to manipulate my daughter for 2 years without saying anything. But that ends now. Carol, Brandon, I think you should leave. Jessica can stay if she wants to talk. But you two need to go. Carol left without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Brandon hesitated, looked at Jessica, then followed his mother. And then it was just me and my daughter, sitting in my friend's living room. The wreckage of our relationship spread between us. Mom, Jessica said finally. I messed up. Yes, you did. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if you can, I said honestly. Jessica, you broke something between us that might not be repairable. You chose status over love, appearances over authenticity, and another woman over your own mother. That's not something I can just forgive and forget because you're in a bind. But I do love you, she whispered. I know you do, I said. But love without respect isn't enough. And right now I don't feel respected. I feel used. Jessica cried harder, and I let her. We sat there for a long time, the silence heavy with everything that had been said and everything that couldn't be unsaid. Finally, Jessica stood up, wiping her eyes. I'll go, but Mom, I am sorry. I really am. I believe you're sorry about the consequences, I said gently. I'm not sure you're sorry about the actions. But Jessica, I hope you learn from this. I hope you figure out who you really are and what you really want, instead of letting people like Carol tell you who to be. Jessica left, and I sat alone in Denise's living room feeling empty and full at the same time. Empty of the anger and hurt, full of something that felt like freedom. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer, Robert. Heard through the grapevine what happened. Well done, you chose yourself. That takes courage. Another text, this time from Emily. Jessica called me screaming about the venue. I didn't engage. Just wanted you to know my mother is furious, which means you did something right. And finally, a text from Margaret. Come stay with me for a while. Let's take that trip to Ireland you've always talked about. You have $200,000 and no one to spend it on but yourself. Let's start living, sister. I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in weeks. I looked around Denise's living room, thought about my own apartment waiting for me. Thought about Jessica probably crying in Brandon's arms right now while Carol plotted her next move. And I realized something profound. For 28 years, I had defined myself by being Jessica's mother. Every decision, every sacrifice, every choice had been filtered through that identity. But Jessica had taken that identity from me when she said I was too embarrassing to fill that role at her wedding. And in doing so, she'd accidentally given me something precious. She'd given me permission to be just Linda, not Jessica's mother. Not Mark's widow. Just Linda, a 58-year-old woman with $200,000 in the bank and a whole life ahead of her. The next few months were hard. Jessica and I barely spoke. She and Brandon ended up postponing the wedding indefinitely, unable to afford the celebration Carol had planned without the venue. Carol's reputation in her social circle took a hit when word got out about how she'd treated me. Apparently, even wealthy socialites draw the line at trying to steal someone's mother's role. Brandon's father, William, reached out to apologize again and actually took me to lunch to express his regret over his wife's behavior. He was kind, genuine, and we ended up becoming unlikely friends. Emily's wedding planning became something I was actually involved in, offering opinions that were valued, feeling appreciated instead of tolerated. And me? I took that trip to Ireland with Margaret, spent 3 glorious weeks exploring castles and drinking Guinness, and not once thinking about wedding venues or ungrateful daughters. I came back refreshed, bought myself a new car, finally updated my wardrobe with clothes I actually liked instead of clearance rack necessities. I started therapy to work through the pain of Jessica's betrayal and my own patterns of self-sacrifice. I joined a book club, started dating a kind man named Tom who treated me like I mattered. I began, finally, to build a life that was mine. Jessica reached out 6 months after the canceled venue. We met for coffee, awkward and painful, but it was a start. She was in therapy too, working through her issues with Carol and her own insecurities. We're not where we were. We might never be. But we're building something new, something based on mutual respect instead of my endless sacrifice. She understands now that what she did was wrong, and I understand that I enabled her by never setting boundaries. We're both learning, growing, healing. If you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel less than by your own family, please hear me. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Not even for your children. Love should expand you, not diminish you. It should celebrate your light, not ask you to dim it for someone else's comfort. And anyone who loves you only when you're making yourself small doesn't truly love you at all. Taking back that venue wasn't about revenge. It was about self-respect. It was about teaching my daughter that actions have consequences, that people aren't infinite wells of generosity to be exploited. And it was about choosing myself, finally, after 28 years of choosing everyone else. If this story resonated with you, please share it. Let it reach other parents who are struggling with ungrateful children or manipulative in-laws. Leave a comment telling me your story. Have you ever had to set hard boundaries with family? What happened? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Your support means everything. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be disrespected. Thank you for listening to my story. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.